Welcome to A Cup of Gratitude with Amanda Schaefer. Hi, I'm your host, and I'm so glad you stopped by. This podcast is really for anyone, anywhere, anytime. And it's about taking a moment to slow down and look around and actually see all of the good things that are there. There's no question that asks, is your cup half empty or half full? But I think a better question is, what's in your cup? I mean, a drop of gratitude will benefit your life unimaginably more than a full cup of anything else. So let's settle in and take a look at how we can shift our focus and embrace the joy and the wonder of the life that we have. And once you start, you won't be able to stop seeing the good. And just like me, you won't be able to stop talking about it. And somehow that creates even more. Even in the midst of difficulty, even when it's really hard. Learn how to drink from a cup of gratitude. Welcome today. I am speaking with Jay Gauthier Sr. He is a pastor and a ministry leader with over 38 years of experience faithfully serving the body of Christ. He is the founder and voice behind the Audacious Faith Podcast and the visionary leader of Audacious Faith Ministries, a movement empowering believers to live boldly, walk purposefully, and impact the world around them. Jay is also a multi-book author with resources designed to challenge, equip, and inspire people to pursue their God-given calling, man after my own heart. Whether behind the pulpit, on the mic, or mentoring leaders, Jay brings real, raw, and relevant truth rooted in Scripture and wrapped in grace. Welcome, Jay. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Amanda. I am so happy to be with you and all of your listeners.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have this conversation. As most people who listen know, I have a pre-recording phone call. I do twice kind of the work, but it's because God wants me to truly connect with the people who are my guests. He wants me to get to know their stories, to hear his part in their story, and then for us to actually be able to come in together and allow him to share what he wants to share between the two of our stories. And God does nothing without real thought. He is a God of order and the God of all the little details. And I love all the people I've gotten connected with podcasting. And I have found other ways to collaborate with them because I think it's so important that we link arms, that we cheer each other on, and that we support each other however we can so that the world can see that we are different, that we really do have something that's more like family about us.
Amen.
So I do things a little differently over here. I like to start at the beginning. I think it's such a great avenue for us to be able to see God working because every single story is different and unique, but God is always the same. So Jay, would you be willing to tell us a little bit about your childhood?
Yes, absolutely. So my childhood was great. I grew up in Southern California. In fact, I still live there. I've been here all my life. And I had some great parents. I was blessed in that way. Mom and dad, both present in the home, both married until until they died. So that was a wonderful, stable type of situation for me. I will say, though, it wasn't necessarily a spiritual type of situation for me. It was Judeo-Christian in values, but we didn't go to church or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of grew up with good values, but as far as God was concerned, basically I just had in my mind, I had the thought that there was one. I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't really understand how all of everything that I saw around me was totally by accident. That didn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Creation itself, as I found out later, the Bible tells us pretty much screams of the fact that somebody intelligently designed everything that we see, including us. But there was no real spiritual type of situation in my life. But
Mm-hmm.
childhood was fairly normal, I guess you could say. I was an only child, which made it a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I think that was a great advantage, and of course, there were disadvantages as well. Um, my challenges probably started more when I entered into like middle school, junior high type of years, where I really started to struggle, as many people do, with a lot of self-esteem issues and various things that I was going through where life just didn't really make sense to me. I had a lot of emptiness there, a lot of loneliness that would come,
Mm-hmm.
especially as I would go home and wouldn't have any siblings. Um, and so I guess you could say it was fairly normal, but I started to really feel the pressures and the drift that many adolescents start to feel um, at that particular point in time.
Yeah, you had told me one of the I think key factors in not maybe having any kind of faith being shown to you as a youngster was that your mother was raised Jewish and your father was raised Christian, and so that kind of caused some issues in the family. And your dad was always what you called very respectful of your mother's upbringing, but I believe there were family members that maybe didn't really understand how the two could get along, and that made it a little bit tense for you, and I think probably a little less faith induced of a life because everyone was trying to get along.
Exactly. My mom, she was raised Jewish, although she didn't really embrace a lot of what was there. So she wouldn't really be called somebody that really practiced it.
Hmm.
But for her mom, my grandmother, it was very important to her. And so my
Hmm.
grandmother, especially, my grandfather died when I was about 2, and he was more easygoing apparently. But my
Hmm.
grandmother was very steeped in tradition of the Jewish
Hmm.
faith. She really
Hmm.
couldn't tell you what the scriptures actually meant. She just knew they had certain holidays and certain
Yeah.
meals and certain things that they observed. And so my mom, I think, although she didn't embrace it at the same time, she didn't want there to be a constant war either, where it was this
Right.
horrible thing. So my dad basically, although he grew up, I believe, in a Methodist church and he was involved even as a Sunday school teacher, he just kind of just went with the flow and didn't really push anything. We
Hmm.
celebrated Christmas, but in the secular way,
Hmm.
nothing really beyond that. And I truly didn't understand anything beyond that.
Yeah. And I wonder, it sounds like your grandfather might have maybe tempered things a little bit had he been around, but I could totally understand that. And it must have been difficult for your dad, but I guess, he really loved your mom, and love makes us do all kinds of things, doesn't it?
Yeah, he definitely loved my mom and he definitely loved me. With both
Hmm.
parents, I was blessed in the fact that as far as love was concerned, there was never a doubt there. I never
That's
had
awesome.
moments where I was thinking, wow, do they still love me even though I messed up?
Yeah.
That was something foundational for me even later on as I became a parent myself. I thought, wow, I'm going to be far from perfect, but if I can just get that one thing right, because I know that's what mattered to me the most, I knew
Hmm.
that that would be more important than anything else.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Now, you told me one of the things that you remember being really important and a great connection, kind of bond maker with your dad was music. Your dad had played the baritone horn, he had played in the military. Would you share with us just a little bit about that? But also, can you tell us the story you told me about him tracking down his horn and having it sent to him?
Yeah, so he came up with the idea when I was about 5 or 6 years old that he had had this baritone horn, which for people that aren't familiar with that, it kind of looks like a small miniature version of a tuba.
Hmm.
And it was silver plated and everything. It was a horn that he really loved. And he had left it. He came actually from the Vermont area, and he had left it there, hadn't brought it across the country. And he was trying to track down what happened to it because he really wanted me to learn it. And so eventually, and this is back in the day, of course, when it was nowhere near as easy to track things as it is now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you're literally making phone calls, long distance phone calls, or writing letters and things that were very expensive or very hard. He managed to finally track it down to this couple, and my parents didn't have a lot of money, but he saved up the money to have this shipped across the country to a town called West Covina. Now, I lived in West Los Angeles. For those who are familiar with California, West Covina was about 40 miles away. Ironically, today I live in West Covina, even though it seemed like a totally different world back then when I was 5 years old.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that when we were talking. That's pretty
Yeah,
funny.
that's kind of a
Yeah.
strange full circle moment. But
Hmm.
but so he gets it, and we travel out to what seemed like forever to me as a little kid to West Covina to this couple that he had never even met, but it was someone that was connected to the people that sent it. And we get this horn, and quite honestly, when we get home with this thing is bigger than me. And I had to kind of like sit the bottom of it on the chair between like when I would sit, and I could barely reach the mouthpiece of this thing. And my dad just systematically, day after day, would just teach me the scales, the different things. He got a second instrument himself, he managed to get, and we would just play and play and
Mm,
play. And so music for me was like my second language early on. They say that children learn languages very
hmm
well when they're young. Well, for me, music was that language. The harmonies, everything, which I still use today. It's just embedded in me. And that
hmm
really started with the fact that that meant so much to him that he wanted to do anything possible to pass that on to me.
Yeah, that's a beautiful story. Did he ever tell you when you were older why it meant so much to him?
No, my dad was not real expressive that
Hmm
way.
hmm
He didn't, he always shared love, but I don't know how to explain it. He was always gentle and he never doubted it, but he didn't really vulnerably express his feelings very well. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I don't really remember him sharing much intimate details about himself. I'm sure he hurt at times. I'm sure that he had
hmm
things that he dealt with, but he rarely passed those on to me. I'm not sure about my mom, but rarely.
Yeah. It's a generational thing for sure. I mean, my dad is about to turn 95. My
Oh, wow.
mom lived up until a year and a half ago to be 90, and that just they didn't look into mental health. They didn't talk about feelings. They didn't, do this or do that. There was very few things that we find so important today that they really delved into. There were a lot of marriages where people stayed together because that's just what you did. And, nobody even considered divorce. It's just a very different time. But I
Right.
think, especially for men, I just don't think it was something they felt free to be able to do. Probably somewhere along the line, somebody told them not to express their feelings when they were little. That's what I found with my dad. I have an interesting story. So I don't even remember how it came up, but I was caring for my parents, and somehow in a conversation, he said something about never crying. And I
Mm,
said, Never? Nope, I've never cried. And I said, even as a little kid, no, I don't ever remember crying. And he said, I guess that's just how God made me. And I said, Nope. I said, that's not how God made you. I said, if you look at the Bible, even Jesus cried. I said,
hmm
it's not, that's not true. And I was like, that's a lie that you're believing. And I said, perhaps if you would spend some time with God, and let him speak to you, maybe you might be able to go back and see who made it feel unsafe for you to express those feelings. So, anyway, we never really got that far with that particular one. But when my mom passed away, she passed away in the home and we were with her.
hmm
And the very first thing my dad said after she passed away, he kind of sought me out in the room and waved me down. And he said, Look, and pointed to his face. He's like, I'm crying.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
All at that time, finally, huh?
Yeah, but at 95, unfortunately, it's just the way that they were raised, even just the way that they were told to pray,
Yeah.
thou Father, thou'st had, it's like just call him dad. Talk to
Yeah.
him like you're a kid. It's okay. you know? So, you told me though, even though you didn't, have a lot of talk about faith in your home, you were invited by your neighbors to a vacation Bible school, which you really enjoyed. You told me a little bit of a story about the prize. Would you tell us a little bit about that and what Bible school was like for you?
Sure. So I didn't even know at the time until years later that it was a vacation Bible school. I didn't make the connection until I was later in church, and then it's like,
Yeah.
oh, that's what that was. But
Uh-huh.
but I got invited to this by my neighbors to go. They didn't normally go to that church either. I don't know how they ended up there. But a lot of vacation Bible schools have like a contest, bring some
hmm
friends. And so there I was from the first day they brought me, and I just loved it. I remember absolutely loving this thing. And the prize that they were going to have at the end of the week, because I brought some friends as well, and I was ahead all week. The first prize was a Bible. Now, I
Mm.
know for a lot of people that seems like big deal. It's a Bible. I mean, you can get a Bible anywhere, but I didn't have a Bible. And for me, for some reason, I saw them hold up that a word Bible with the picture in the front of Jesus. And there was something about it.
Mm,
I can't even explain it. There was something about it. It's like, oh, I have to have that. I just
mm,
have to have that. And so all week I was ahead, and I was thinking, I've got this. And then,
yeah.
and this is a lesson I really learned and stuck with me as far as how I do things now in ministry. Because one of the church kids that was there all the time, um, there were more points for first time visitors than repeat visitors.
Hmm.
And that's how it often is. And so on the last day of this thing, he basically just loaded the room with everybody that he could find and got all these first time visitor points. So they had this big award thing that particular night at the end of this thing. And I was thinking for sure I had it. And then I got second place.
Mm,
And second place was this back in the day, they had these things called spirographs where you could do
hmm.
all this art type of thing. Well, I've never been artistic to begin with. And maybe this cemented it because I didn't want anything to do with art after this, I guess. But I got this prize. And I remember my mom saying to me, well, that's a better prize anyways. And in monetary value, it probably was.
Mm,
It's this big spirograph kit, and it was actually a really nice prize. But I was so disappointed.
yeah,
And that's not what I wanted. I wanted the Bible, and it just and the sad thing about it is this kid probably had like four of those. He probably
probably.
didn't even
Yeah.
need it.
Hmm.
And then I remember my mom saying, "Well, if you really want a Bible, we'll get you one." But honestly, I never got one for years.
Mm, mm. That's really, I love that story just because you didn't really understand why you were drawn to it. I don't think it was just because you wanted to win. I
Oh.
think God was beginning to draw you and
Mhm.
he stuck you in this opportunity where you might have gotten a chance to get to know his word, but he continues to pursue us and give us new opportunities. Um, but yeah, I really love that story, and it is a shame because I'm sure that the other kid probably had access to Bibles. Or had you felt, like saying, "Hey, I really did want a Bible," to someone at the church, I'm sure they would have given you one, but you probably
Probably.
didn't
Yeah.
know you were allowed to do that.
I was so shy, I would never ask anyone for anything that wasn't offered to me. That's kind of how I was brought up. And going along with this story, on how God was drawing. Another thing that I don't think I've told you already, which kind of just stuck in my mind, was as an elementary school kid, I would often, back in the day, I was safe enough to walk to school. And so often I would walk to school. I was probably about the third or fourth grade and still not going to church or anything. But across the street from the major street where I would walk down to get to school, there was this Baptist church that was over there. It was a big
Hmm.
building. And I think I had gone in there one time for some community event. So I had just been in the room. And
Hmm.
one day, um, what ended up happening was that I guess the property got purchased. And I was walking down the street and I'm looking across and seeing a wrecking ball
Mm,
knocking down this church. And even though I didn't go to church, there was something about that to me that seemed so wrong and seemed so
mm,
saddening, that it just bothered me. It's like, no, that church needs to be there. That
hmm.
represents God. How can it be torn down?
Wow.
And it just, I don't know why that just came back to my head right now, but it seems that, yeah, God was doing some things.
Well, we pray. Most people who listen know, and if you're new to the show, welcome. But we pray before we start. And even though we've had a pre recording call and gotten to know one another, what we do is we ask God to be the one kind of in charge of this conversation and not to talk about things that maybe we think are going to be important, but for Him to drop memories and thoughts into our spirit for us to share them. And so He's reminding you, I think it was very much on purpose, that yeah, that was another one of those times where you recognized truth.
Hmm.
You hadn't been exposed to it, but the truth is the truth, and you recognized there was something very wrong about that, and that I think that's a powerful memory. I'm glad you shared it. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Now, you told me so in elementary school, even though you were very shy and quiet, you did have a lot of friends, and that was a good time for you. You got to junior high, and you said what happened is you had these friends, and then your mom ended up sending you to a different junior high
Mhm.
than most of your friends. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And was that an easy transition, or what happened?
Yeah, it was a horrible transition. And my mom meant well. She really
Mm-hmm.
did. And often parents mean well and they try to set things up better for their kids. But there are times when the decision, not really known to them, goes wrong.
Yeah.
She had heard that the junior high that I was going to, she had heard some things about it that she didn't like. And so she decided to use my grandmother's address and send me to a different one. The problem is, what she didn't realize is that one actually had more problems than the one she would have sent me to. And at the same time, probably only about three other kids from my elementary school ended up going there.
Yeah.
They mostly went to, especially the ones that I knew and were friends with the most, went to the one I was supposed to go to. So now we're going into a hormonal nightmare of a age group anyways, and now not knowing anybody. And
Hmm.
it's a cruel world in middle school. It's just a cruel world. I was
Yeah.
one of the tallest kids in the school, which set me apart in a way that I didn't want to be set apart.
Hmm.
And really, it just launched into a very difficult time for me.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. I can hear it even in you're just recounting it. Um, you told me that due to all of that, you ended up going through what you called a time of depression. You were being bullied. You liked a girl who ended up having a crush on your friend, and it just sounds like blow after blow after blow. And for someone who's quiet and insular, and it doesn't sound like, it sounds like your dad absolutely adored you and introduced you to the most important thing in the world to him, which was music,
Mhm.
but didn't really express his feelings. So probably didn't feel like a safe place for you to express yours. Did you talk to anyone during that time and tell them how you were feeling?
That's the thing. There was really no one to talk to. Um,
Yeah.
if I had gone home and said something,
Hmm.
my mom would have marched right down to the school
Yeah.
and she would have tried to intervene, which would have, in my mind anyways, made it 10 times worse.
Yeah.
And the friends, I mean, they were all friends in middle school, they're struggling just as much as you are to survive. So nobody's having, at least not my group, we're not having those conversations.
Hmm.
And basically, yeah, there was just nobody except to cry out to a God that I really didn't even know,
Hmm.
but hoped it might be there. And then it seemed that he was just cosmically just taking one shot at me after another.
Hmm.
And so it really became a very dark place. I remember one day as well where one of the ways I would get to play at lunch in the basketball games with the main group of people, an athlete,
Hmm.
was that I would get there early with my ID and I would check out the ball so that
Hmm.
we would have it. And one of the kind of unwritten rules was, well, if you were the one that actually checked out the ball, then you got to play. So I would usually be the last pick, but
Hmm.
I would still get to play. So this one particular day, there were these two guys, and it was towards the end, and it's like, hey guys, I need the ball back to turn it in. The bell was ringing, the PE teachers were all yelling, and pretty soon I was getting in trouble and not get my ID, and they weren't giving it back to me. And I remember finally I took the ball and I went to, because it came to me and I went to walk over to turn it in and they were threatening me. They're like, you better not turn that in. You better not turn that in or you're going to get it, and all that. And I went and did it anyways. And one of the guys, it was one of those, I don't know, you've seen a lot of these in the past where the bully is actually the short guy.
Hmm.
But then he has the big guy who's like the counterpart with him who does all the dirty work.
Hmm.
And so that's kind of how these couple of guys were. And I turned it in and I started to walk away to go to class. And all of a sudden they're following me. And I was never really fast, but I got scared and basically I made a run for it.
Mhm.
And so I'm running through the school. It's such a torturous moment even to think about it. I'm running through the school. A couple of people that I know are fooling around and get in front of me and they're like to kind of like slow me down.
Mhm.
And I'm like, no, no, get out of the way. And the guy, I remember him, his face right now. I can still see it, looking behind me, seeing who is chasing me and going, oh, shoot, and
Mhm.
then,
Mhm.
and so I'm running for my life, at least in my head.
Mhm.
And I get over to Metal Shop, which is where I'm at, and everyone's outside. And there was this girl there. Her name was Teresa. And Teresa, just to fool around, used to always flirt with me
Mhm.
and all these kind of things. And anyways, so I get to this room. This guy's pretty much right behind me. And I get there and she's like, what's the matter? So she just starts like giving me this big hug and all this kind of stuff. And she knew the guy
Mhm.
that was coming. So he comes over, he slows down because he sees her and she's something about, hey, you just keep on going. You just keep
Mhm.
on going. You leave him alone. All this. And I managed to get into class. But
Mhm.
yeah, it was a nightmare of some years right there.
Yeah, again, I can hear it when you're telling the story. And isn't it interesting how vivid the emotions that go with those times still are? I mean, times when we're traumatized, no matter what the
It
trauma is.
it is. In fact, that middle school, every once in a while, I'm back in that area.
Mhm.
And it's, the from the street, you can see the open asphalt area. And the very window where I turn the ball in, it's
Mhm.
still there. Nothing's really changed.
Wow.
And I can go there today and I can look from the street and see that and it like all comes back.
Yeah. And emotions, they're just so big. And I share this illustration all the time just because I think it's so helpful. But when you're young, your brain isn't fully formed yet, you're not fully grown yet. But we have the same size emotions as adults do. And so I saw this person take a large 12-ounce glass of water, and then they took this little kind of shot glass size water
Mhm.
glass. They put them next to each other and took a dropper with some red dye. Well, they put 2, 3 drops in the big glass and stirred it, and it was still clear. You couldn't see anything. But when they put a couple of drops in the little glass and stirred it, it turned red.
Hmm.
And for me, it's just this reminder when you're dealing with kids and emotions. They're so overwhelming. They're so overwhelming for adults. Can you imagine, what it's like for a little child? And when there's no safe, like, release valve or place to go, we bury them, and they stay there, and we get re-traumatized over and over again. And it is amazing how some of those things are just, they feel like they'll never go away.
Yep, absolutely. It's just like yesterday. So
Yeah.
then the other thing you mentioned was about the girl situation and
Hmm.
that was kind of the culmination of things. So I had very few friends, but I did have a few.
Hmm.
And I was always feeling awkward for some reason, even though in elementary school when I had the different friends and everything, I didn't feel that way, but I did feel this way in junior high. So there was this girl that I kind of liked and she was nice and she was at least cordial back and forth. And I always loved I loved girls from the time I was in preschool. There was never a girls yuck stage in my life. There's just never. And so she was real nice and I would talk to her. I mean, that was it, all totally innocent. And so
Hmm.
then I find out that she likes somebody and sure enough, it happens to be one of the two friends that I actually have.
Mm.
Of all the people that it could be in the school.
Hmm.
So I find this out and honestly, I just had it. It was like the last straw. And I remember
Mm.
walking home. I walked to my grandmother's, which was a little ways. And basically, this is probably the only time I was like this in life, not knowing God yet. I've never been able to be angry with him since I've actually known him.
Hmm.
But at that point, I was angry
Hmm.
because I was walking and I was just, I was getting the street. You're supposed to look, we're ingrained in us, look both ways before you cross the street, right? Well, I
Hmm.
purposely was not.
Hmm.
There's a little bit of my peripheral vision, that self-preservation that I guess kind of was, but
Hmm.
I literally was just walking in the street and I remember even saying, you know what? I don't care. Go ahead. You
Mm-hmm.
obviously have it out for me. You obviously just like to just rub it in my face. So you might as well just hit me with a car then.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just do it, get it over with.
Yeah. Again, emotions. Another thing I talk about often is the fact that like we got them because God gave them to us to have relationship with Him and to be able to worship Him. But when creation fell and we fell, our emotions fell too. They're really out of whack,
Yeah.
and they can take us places that we really don't want to go, and we've got to actually train our minds through renewing them in the Word to be able to do that. But when you don't have the Word and you don't understand, um, it's so sad. Many people die by suicide because they get caught up and they cannot see past that particular moment. And so even you not looking when you crossed the street, had your life been snuffed out at that time, what a shame that would have been, you know?
Yeah, and what's crazy about it, not crazy, but it seemed crazy, is there wasn't a car near me every time I tried that.
Well, that's again, God's hand. You know, Jonah, Jonah, when he jumped off of the ship, there was a giant storm and crashing waves. He
Hmm.
thought he was going to die.
Hmm.
He didn't know God was going to send a fish to swallow him, like so. You never quite know how God's going to do it. I'm glad it wasn't a giant fish. That would have been a whole different thing. But no
Yeah,
cars, it sounds good to me.
exactly.
Now, let's get back to music for a second because we already talked about you having this bond with your dad through music and him teaching you at such a young age and you really enjoying it. You actually got very good. And
Mhm.
you talked about during our pre-recording call getting invited to this community band where you were only 12 and some of these other people were a lot older. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I think this showed the importance of mentors and people that can actually teach you things in
Mm-hmm.
life. I had gone for this scholarship that my dad wanted me to go to, and I had done this audition, and one of the instructors heard from outside. He was judging in another room, but he heard me playing from outside. And he was so drawn to the fact that here I was playing a baritone horn. Very few people were playing it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I ended up winning that scholarship for some lessons. I think it was $100. It wasn't a huge deal, but it was still a big thing to me. And this teacher, he knew my teacher at school. And so he approached her and he said, "Hey, I would really invite, can you connect me with the parents?" And so he connected with my mom and dad and said, "Hey, I have this community band that we meet once a week. It's a lot of older people, some professional musicians, some retired musicians. We get together and we just play a lot of things. I'd love to invite your son to come and be a part."
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I was about 12 years old at
Yeah.
the time. And I'm in the room with these people that are 60, 70, and everywhere in between, and from every subject. And so there I went, week after week. And for about the first month and a half, the only time I would know where we actually were in the music was when he would stop and he would start us at a certain measure. And I'd last for about a measure and a half and I'd be lost again. And it was just kind of overwhelming, but I started to learn. And they were very patient with me. I would, if I didn't know where I was, obviously I just stopped playing because I didn't want to mess it up.
Mm-hmm.
But then suddenly one night, I started to be able to follow it a little bit more. I started to be
Mm-hmm.
able to play a little bit more. And before you knew it, I really got a lot better. And it also taught me about not just staying in your comfort zone, but you need to be stretched sometimes to things that are way beyond your limit in order to achieve more. And that
Yeah.
really put me in that situation where I was in totally over my head. But after being in that band for a year, then really and I don't mean to sound proud about it, but God had put me in a situation where I was pretty much at a level better than anyone else of my peers in the particular school band as
Mm-hmm.
far as being able to follow music, and it was because of that experience.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing the things that we learn lessons from, and being in community like that of people who knew what they were doing and
Hmm.
trying and continuing to try even though you didn't get it is really important. It matters because one day it does click. And that applies to anything that we do. It's such a great example of just getting up and trying again, getting up and trying again and persisting. Because sometimes that's how it's not just that in the end you played really well, but you learned something that you'll never forget. You'll never unlearn it. I think
Exactly.
it's so important.
And I think something that's coming to my mind right now that I didn't even realize until this point is really the key that made that successful wasn't even the invitation. That was the gateway to it.
Hmm.
But it was the patience and the willingness of those who were actually there, those who were
Yeah.
sitting around me to not say, "Kid, what are you doing here?"
Hmm.
But to actually say, point out everyone, okay, we're starting right here. We're starting right here.
Hmm.
The man who was sitting next to me that would point when I was lost, and he would, instead of going, "Oh, kid, you're never going to get this,"
Hmm. Yeah.
he would point to the measure, get me
Yeah.
back on track. People that are we have to be willing to not just have something for ourselves, but to pass on to others. We have to be
Mm.
willing to bring people along. And I think if that hadn't been the case, I probably after 2 weeks of that would have been done.
Yeah. And this is a lesson that you were then going to carry into when you started being a pastor and mentoring people and everything else.
Mhm.
God was teaching you something through something you loved that you would use later. He doesn't waste anything,
Absolutely.
which I love. So let's move on a little bit more. So you told me that when you were in high school, there was a girl that you liked and a boy. Um, you guys were out. It was late at night, and you ended up having the gospel shared with you. But it was a bit of an interesting twist on how that happened. Would you tell us that story?
Yeah, so the gospel is often most effective in the most unorthodox and improper of ways, I guess you could say.
Hmm.
And what had happened was we would play in the band at the football games. Our football team was terrible at the time, so really all we cared about was playing.
Hmm.
We had to sit through these miserable games, but we had a great time. And afterwards, a lot of the people would go to the local pizza parlor deal and everything. And so my friend at the time, who was a pastor's son,
Hmm.
but he was struggling, like
Hmm.
many pastors' kids do. And he was working at a Safeway market. And so even though he wasn't 21, he had people that would give him access to alcohol.
Hmm.
And so he decided this is what a lot of people were doing after the games. We'd go to the local pizza place and we'd be outside first and we'd drink some and
Hmm.
that was my first introduction to that. The
Hmm.
idea was, your life really isn't very happy, so get yourself drunk so that you can be wasted and not really, think about your problems for a few
Hmm.
hours.
Hmm.
And on that particular evening, I had drunk just very little, just virtually nothing, because I was the one driving the car.
Hmm.
I was 16 years of age and I had just got trusted with the vehicle. I had gotten my license and we're in this little Honda Civic wagon with a very primitive blue, pretty blue type of color that we're in.
Hmm.
And so the girl that I like, she's sitting in the back seat. My other friend was back there. I'm driving, and my other friend, the pastor's son, is in the front seat. And we pull to the side of this street one night, a dark street. I'm not even sure why.
Hmm.
It wasn't for anything romantic. I think we were just going to talk. And it's raining, pouring rain. The whole windows, because we have the windows up, it's totally fogging up. So you can't even see outside of the car.
Hmm.
And he just starts losing it, literally crying and saying, "I'm so scared for you."
Hmm.
And I'm looking at him like, "Scared for me?
Hmm.
Why?" And he goes, "Because I don't want you to burn."
Hmm.
And I was like, what are you talking about? He goes, "I
Hmm.
don't want you to burn in hell." And I go, "Burn in hell? Where is this coming from?"
Hmm.
And he says, "Yeah, because if you don't have Jesus in your life, then when you die, you're going to burn in hell forever.
Mm.
And so I'm sitting there as a 16-year-old, absolutely plastered. He's making no sense to me.
Mhm.
I'm pretty sober,
Mhm.
and I'm thinking, you're in way worse shape than I am. As
Yeah.
far, and I'm thinking if we're talking about who's getting into heaven and who's a better person right now, I'm a better person than you are. That's what I'm thinking in my head.
Mhm.
And in my mind, that's really what it was all about. The concept that I had of God was God is a loving God. That's the way that I see him. Horrible people probably do go to hell, but if you're a pretty good person and you pretty much try to treat people right, then I'm pretty sure you're going to heaven. I mean, that's what I've been told every funeral I ever gone to. They were all going there. And so, I'm figuring, okay, why I'm not like worse than some of these people I went to their funerals for. So
Mhm.
I'm thinking it's good. And so he's telling me this, and it's like, I'm thinking this guy's crazy. And then the girl who had been going to church as well,
Mhm.
she pipes up from the back seat going, no, he's right. If you don't have
Mhm.
Jesus in your heart as your Lord and your Savior, then you don't go to heaven when you die, and
Mm.
all that. And so I'm thinking they're both nuts, is what I'm thinking at this point. But this haunted me.
Mhm.
I could not get this out of my head. It was the first time I ever heard that in my life.
Yeah.
And so a few days go by, we're over on the church property where they lived because they had a parsonage right on this property. They had a little Montessori school there, and then they had the church buildings. And we're over there playing basketball, and I'm with my other friend who was in the car, who had been raised pretty much in the Catholic Church, and he would go to the Catholic Church all the time. And I asked him, I said, Ken, which was his name, I said, you know that stuff they were saying the other night in the car? And he goes, yeah. I go, do you believe that? Is
Yeah.
that something you believe? And then he ended up affirming what I thought I believed. He goes,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
he goes,
Yeah.
I go to church and I do what I can. If you're a pretty good person, I know you get there. And I was like, oh yeah, that's what I think.
Mm.
You know? And so I blew it off. A few months later, though, things go wrong with the other girl. My mom doesn't like her and she starts cutting it off and she starts setting me up with this other girl
Mhm.
that she met her parents, and her parents were very strong Christians, and they started to build a relationship. And it was the first time my mom had ever been open to that because they weren't preaching to her, they were just kind.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening was that they started building this relationship. So this other girl I'm trying to see during Christmas break, and we didn't have cell phones, we couldn't call or whatever, and I was supposed to be home at 11 o'clock.
Mhm.
And I literally got home at like 11:01. I got stuck at the light. I cut it
Mhm.
too close. And all of a sudden, for the first time in my life, at 16 years old, you're grounded for 1 minute. 1 minute. I looked at my mom. It's like, are you kidding me right now?
Mhm.
I'm here. It's 11:01.
Mhm.
It's like, no, I told you to be there on time. You're grounded. Can't go anywhere for the rest of Christmas break. So 2 days later, she's like, I'm going over to this house and where this other girl is at and the parents were at. She goes, do you want to go with me?
Mhm.
And I looked at her and I said, you told me I was grounded. I couldn't go anywhere. And she goes, oh, you can come here. You can come with me. And so we go over there, and then it's kind of an arranged thing, I guess. And so we end up that's the person I'm married to, by the way, for 39 years now. So it
Yeah.
worked.
Yeah.
But so we end up over there, and then we end up getting a few weeks later invited to some Christmas thing that she was going to be in the play at church.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, I had wanted to go to church before. The other girl invited me to church. I wanted to go. My mom said no. But all of a
Yeah.
sudden, it was okay. We were all going. And so we go there. And then the first day that the pastor is sharing the message, all of a sudden, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I don't believe this.
Mhm.
He's saying exactly what my drunk friend
Yeah.
was saying in the car. I have heard this before. This is exact. What is going on here? And so I went in kind of stages. We kept going back. And it was interesting the stages that it took. At first, it was like, I don't know what these people believe, but
Mhm.
Um, but they're very nice people and they're
Mm-hmm.
very sincere. And that was it. They were loving, they were caring, they seemed genuinely happy that I was there. They seemed to take an interest, they weren't fake. And so it was part of something to go to. So I felt good going there.
Mm-hmm.
So we
Yeah.
went back. A little while later, it's like, I'm not sure I believe what these people say they believe, but one thing I can tell for sure is that they believe it.
Yeah.
And then in a dramatic moment, probably after going for about 2.5 to 3 months, right after my 17th birthday, my future wife, who was going through a lot of things I already knew, and one day when the invitation was given, she abruptly handed me her Bible real quick and walked forward.
Mm-hmm.
And I was left there. And here's the full circle, Amanda. Here's the full circle. That Bible that I had wanted at that
I
day.
just wrote it. I just wrote, she handed
Yeah,
you her Bible.
a
And I
Bible.
wrote, I wrote, there you got the Bible that you wanted.
That was the first time I had one in my hand.
Hmm. Yeah. Look
Ever.
at God. Can we just stop for a second? Okay. So we start off with you want the Bible, you're feeling drawn to the Bible, right? Then we have you walking by this church, seeing it being wrecked and realizing something is absolutely wrong with that. Then you're haunted by something that's being said to you that you've never heard the truth about going to hell before. And then you end up at church through your mom, who didn't want to go to church, ends up taking you to church, and you end up hearing the truth again. And then the girl that she wants you to date and it's okay to see is the one who goes forward and then hands you the Bible. I mean, look at God.
Yeah, so
He
I'm
speaks.
I'm kind of glad we're not on video right now because I've literally got tears in my eyes right now when I'm thinking about this and realizing this.
Yeah.
The She handed me that, and it was like she handed me the most magic thing in the world.
Mm-hmm.
It was, she walked down there, and it was just amazing that she was even walking down there because
Yeah.
of what I knew that she was going through at the time.
Wow.
And it just grabbed me, and it was like I could not
Mm.
hear it, but at the same time I could hear God's voice as I held that in my hands. And what he said to me basically was this: everything that you ever need to know in your life is contained within the pages of the book you're holding in your hand.
Mm.
It's my message to you,
Wow.
and it's there. And I just grabbed onto it. I had no clue of anything that was in that book. Nothing.
Yeah.
I didn't even open it. I just grabbed onto it. And that particular day, it's like God was saying to me, you know, when you walk out of this building,
Mm-hmm.
you have to cross the street to get to the parking lot where the car is.
Yeah.
And a lot of times cars would come racing around that corner. You had to be very careful. And basically what he was revealing to me is like, if you walk across that street and get hit by a car today, you are not ready to come and see me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I realized at that moment that, I still didn't understand a lot, but I did believe that I had sinned against God. I did believe that his son came to die for me on the cross
Mm-hmm.
and that he rose again. And so I basically said to God, I don't understand this, but I believe this. And the only way I know how, I'm just asking you to save me.
Mm-hmm.
And that changed my life that day.
Praise God. I love the way that he works because one thing I want to point out is a lot of times people don't understand how you couldn't know. And I've talked to so many hundreds of people and heard their stories. And before you know anything about God, if you haven't read the Bible or you haven't gone to church, you don't understand. And I've heard people just have these horrible reactions where they've been sent to like a Catholic school, but they didn't have a faith at home, and they see this man on a cross and it's scary and they're little, or hearing songs about the blood and not understanding, and so we have to understand as people who do get everything how to reach people who don't yet know. And what I hear in your story is it started with people who were kind and loving and people who believed what they said they believed and then acted accordingly. And that is what got you to the place and your girlfriend, now wife, to the place. to receive the truth. So just a little note there to all of us, right? It matters how we act and how we treat people. And it matters those mentors who helped you understand, slowly how to get on track musically. That's
Mhm.
who we have to be as mothers and fathers, spiritual mothers and fathers. We have to help. We have to help people get into understanding where they are in the song, you know.
Yeah, there was a man there that it just came to my mind right now. His name was Frank.
Mm-hmm.
And Frank was in his 80s. And here I was at 16 now, about to be 17 years of age. Every week, Frank would come to me. Every week, he would be so happy to see me. He'd have this smile on his face. He'd come
Mm-hmm.
right up to me. He'd shake my hand. How was your week? And it wasn't just like, how are you? And then wanting to pat. I mean, he really wanted to know.
Yeah.
He would listen.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, wow, this man is so kind. But there was something that I didn't know about Frank.
Mm-hmm.
And that was that during this time when he was doing that for me, Frank was in his third bout of cancer.
Mm.
And Frank never, ever talked about it. Never
Mm-hmm.
told me, never shared. Man must have been in tremendous discomfort and pain. And
Mm-hmm.
yet every week he was there. And he was just so genuine. And then it was right around that time when one week suddenly Frank was not there, and that never happened,
Mm-hmm.
And so I asked somebody, "Hey, where's Frank? I noticed he's not here today." And they told me,
Yeah.
that he was in his third bout of cancer. This was the third time that he had been dealing with it. By the way, I never saw Frank again, and I won't see Frank again until I see him in heaven, and I know that he'll be there.
Mm-hmm.
But that made such an impression on me because here was a man that was going through so much, and yet his faith was so genuine, and the peace in his heart was so genuine that
Yeah.
he sincerely had time to care about some teenager that really we should have had nothing in common with.
Yeah. That's beautiful and powerful. And again, I think maybe this is like the fifth time in just a couple of days where I've had a conversation with someone where we talked about the importance of the people who make people feel seen,
Hmm.
valued, and heard. And that's such a great example of that because it doesn't cost us anything, to love people like Jesus. That's what Jesus did. He made people feel seen. He took the
Yes.
time. He took the time to talk to them, no matter whether he was supposed to, based on like the Samaritan woman or not. He made the time, and he made sure people knew that they were seen, and he had he had the kindness, um, to love them well. Now, we could probably get a cup of coffee and talk another few hours, but I do have a couple more things that I do want to get to. As I said, we pray and
Sure.
we ask God to lead the conversation, which He has absolutely done with themes
Mm.
and threads and all of the good things. But I do want to talk about, so eventually, we talked about you did get married to her, and you started your own family. You ended up becoming a pastor, and you
Yes.
got to this one point where you had a rough time in life. Things were starting to kind of fall apart. There was a lot of negative, difficult things going on.
Mhm.
And then that moved into the pandemic time when people kind of stopped going to church. So
Right.
if you maybe could tell us just a little bit about the time where everything felt like was falling apart, God did speak something to you during that time, what it
Yes.
was, and then how that turned into moving into podcasting and writing books and things like that.
I had a huge vision as far as what I thought God wanted me to do in ministry,
Mm-hmm.
which occurred really early in the 90s. I had the sense that God wanted me to just, that He wanted to use my life to reach thousands of people. I thought that would just be through the church, but the church never actually really grew much. And I'm still here, and it's still not huge, honestly. And that's just the way that He did it. But so what happened was I had gone through probably about a good 25 years of ministry with some good things happening, but nothing like I thought. And then everything started to fall apart. My mom suddenly, who had been healthy all her life, I was so close to my mom. And my mom, at 63 years of age, basically was diagnosed with cancer, and within 6 months, she was gone. And then my dad, who was 8 years older and had many more health problems and was expected to probably die way before she does, is sitting there fighting dementia and wondering which has happened.
Mm-hmm.
My mother-in-law, who was like a second mom to me, and she would be at our house half the week, every week. About a year and a half after my mom, she suddenly just drops to the floor one night, and half hour later, she was gone.
Mm.
And now my dad is like, because my wife's father had died of cancer years before, barely after we got married. So now my dad's the last one left, the one who
Mm-hmm.
was expecting to go first.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to take care of him, and it's a big mess, and there was no coverage for him or anything because it was all through my mom's work. And, so nothing was set up. And it was just a mess. Meanwhile, we're flailing financially. The church is flailing financially. So
Mm-hmm.
we get to the point where then my dad passes away too. The church, we were going to merge with another ministry, and then everyone was getting real close. And then there was a big moral blow up, which was beyond my control. And then it just fell apart with people hurt all over the place.
Mm.
We were about to lose our home, and this is the night before we're going to lose our home. And I'm just beside myself.
Mm-hmm.
I've literally, it's 1 o'clock in the morning, everybody else is asleep, and the weight of the world is just on me. And I'm saying to God, God, I just don't get what happened. I literally thought, you told me all these things you wanted me to do,
Mm-hmm.
and all I've ever wanted to do is help people, and it seems that I have just failed at everything, and I failed everybody. And I didn't, I just didn't know what to do. And I
Yeah.
couldn't make sense of it. And so as I'm sitting there and I'm praying, the one thing that's coming to my mind is, and I'm saying to God, I'm acknowledging to him, I said, I don't claim to understand any of this. There's only one thing that I do know for sure, no matter how I'm feeling right now, is that you cannot possibly be wrong. It's not possible.
Mm-hmm.
So even though I feel like it, even though I feel like everything is wrong, I know you can't be wrong. So it's got to be me, or it's got to be something else. There's got to be something that I'm supposed to learn here.
Mm-hmm.
What is it? And the words, again, no audible voice, but sometimes the Spirit of God just speaks to you in a way that you hear every word.
Yep.
And it was this, which I've never forgotten. He said, I'm going to tell you something right now, and you need to remember what I'm telling you. Because if you don't remember this, the time's going to come when you're going to give up. Just when it looks like everything I put in your heart will never happen, that's the moment that it will.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, I had to hold on to that. We lost our home, everything. It's not like people go, oh,
Yeah.
wow, you had this great moment and then everything got fixed.
Mm-hmm.
No,
Mm-hmm.
7 years.
Yeah.
For the next 7 years, there were ups and downs. Take a step forward, take a step back, detours, going into financial entrepreneurship, all types of talk about ironic. You lose your house, you lose everything, and you're going to help people with finances. I mean, God has a
Yeah.
huge sense of humor. I never
Mm-hmm.
would have been thinking to go there.
Yeah.
Um, and yet God just expanded the platform, expanded who I got to know, expanded capabilities, abilities, everything.
Mm-hmm.
And and then literally when it looked like it still was never going to work, all of a sudden major breakthroughs
Mm-hmm.
at that breaking point. And then as far as ministries and podcasts is concerned, we were getting momentum, things are starting to go, the pandemic hits, and then all of a sudden people that you would think be coming back to church, they're not.
Mm-hmm.
And so there I am again with one of these late night conversations with God again before bed. It seems to be where he always does it. And I'm confused again. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying, God, I don't know what you want me to do. I want to reach people for you. It is all for you. It's not for me. It's not for glory. It's not for anything like that. I don't care about getting the recognition,
Mm-hmm.
but I want my life to count for you to reach and impact people.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, again, I kind of heard that voice and was like, if they're not going to come to you, then you need to go to them.
Mm-hmm.
And that meant the internet, like we're
Yep.
doing right now. And he goes,
Mm-hmm.
start a podcast. I'm thinking, a podcast? Are you kidding me? God, nobody's going to listen to a podcast. I want to
Yep.
make a fool out of myself.
Mm-hmm.
I even messaged my son the next day going, I'm going to go out on a huge limb here. And he
Mm-hmm.
says, why? I go, because I'm going to start this podcast and nobody's going to listen. And he goes, Dad, nobody listens to anyone's podcast when it starts. Just do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we start this thing figuring it'll go nowhere.
Right.
And now here, that was 2021. And now here we are, 140 something episodes in, books out, online conference happening in a couple of weeks, uh, different ministries expanding, and now even it just got approached by I think it's called Faith TV or something. It's on Roku and Apple TV and all type of things just to explain. And I can't even explain what's going on, but I just keep flying by the seat of my pants and just do whatever God's saying to do.
Amen. And that's how he gets the glory. When we have no idea what we're doing and our heart is, I just want to share you with people,
Hmm.
that's when he uses us. It's funny because I started mine in 2021. It was the same thing. I was
Hmm.
cut off taking care of my parents during a pandemic, couldn't even go to church, couldn't go anywhere, do anything. And I said, I miss sharing the gospel. I didn't listen to podcasts. I had no idea what I was doing. And yet here we are, right?
Right.
And that's what he's looking for. His word says he looks to and fro for those that he can use, those who want, to go for him. And the other thing that I think people forget, if you look at the book of Acts, it was persecution that propelled the gospel forward. It is
Yes.
typically not happy good times that make us, get stronger, learn things, go new places. And we have this idea in our head. My daughter is a therapist, and I think she is the one who said this. I'm not 100% sure, but it tracks no matter what. Sometimes we have in our head all these plans, right? So the example is you're going to go on a trip to Italy and you have the itinerary and you know how many days you're going to be there and you've packed and you have all these beautiful things you want to see and taste and people you want to meet and places you want to go, and you're on the plane and you're so excited. And when the plane lands, you land in Holland and you don't have any of that stuff that you prepared ahead of time, and you can't leave. That's where you are. But you
Hmm.
could either enjoy it, find beautiful things, taste beautiful things, meet beautiful people, have a beautiful amazing adventure, or you can be upset that you're not in Italy. It's just like this thing we do. And God wants to give you the surprise of the beauty of Holland, and you're so focused on Italy that you miss it,
Yeah.
And so I think he gets really excited when his kids say, "Hey, I don't know anything right now. None of this makes any sense. I just want to tell people about you." And he says, "Okay, let's do it. Let's do this thing. Let me see. Let's look at Jay. I gave him this ability, that ability. He learned how to do that. He can do this now because other people did it for him, blah, 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 blah. Next thing you know, you're a pastor, a podcaster, and an author." And, I think it's wonderful. I think he'll continue to give you new opportunities because that's what he does. When you are willing, when you hear him, to believe him and obey him, he'll give you new things to do.
Amen.
Now, one of the things we talked about during our pre-recording call was doing a giveaway of one of your books, correct?
We can do that. Yes.
Yeah.
So what I'd love to do, I did a book called the Audacious Faith Playbook.
Mm-hmm.
And this is basically 14 plays, spiritual plays that you can call for different situations in life, major situations in life.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say that if somebody that's listening, wants to reach out to me at contact, I will send them the electronic version of that book for free, the complete book. with the companion
Awesome.
guide, everything that goes with it.
Okay, well then why don't we do this? Why don't we'll be listing links to follow you on social media and other things in the show notes. So maybe we can put that there. And so someone
Sure.
who's listening can just jump over into the show notes and do a click, right?
Yeah, just reach out to me and say, hey, I heard the podcast and I'd love to request the book, and I'll make
Mm-hmm.
sure that you get it.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, Jay, as I said, we probably could get some coffee and talk for a few more hours. I think we have very kindred spirits and people who are willing to not let the persecution take us down, but to look where are you sending me with this, God? And I think it's life can be an abundant, joyful, exciting life, even when things aren't always easy or maybe going the way that we think that they should. God always has a plan and it's always good. And so on this side of heaven, when we get to talk about him, it's just an amazing day, right?
Absolutely.
Well, I am so grateful for you being willing to come and share your story. I'm looking forward to when we can share it with everyone, and I hope you have a great day.
You too, Amanda. Thank you so much, and God bless.
Thank you. Hey, so I just want to thank you so much for spending your time with me. And I want to challenge you to go out today and to just take notice and to stop and really look around and find at least one good thing, one thing to be thankful for. You know, if you do that today, you're going to find so many more things tomorrow without even trying. Because once you start, you begin to see what's always been there. And if you need a refill, you can come join me again for another cup. Make sure to subscribe and have an awesome day and go be grateful.